The first thing I remember is the beeping. That sharp, irritating sound that sliced through the silence and dragged me back from the abyss. My eyelids felt like bricks, but the weight pressing down on my chest was heavier than that. When I finally pried my eyes open, the room was a sterile white blur. Too clean, too cold. A hospital. My throat burned as I tried to swallow. A nurse hovered nearby, her expression stiff, almost unreadable. And that's when I realized something was wrong. Not wrong in the casual sense, wrong in a way that made my body feel alien to me. Where? My voice cracked. Where's my husband? The nurse glanced at the door nervously, as though my question was dangerous. He'll be here soon, Mrs. Sinclair. Please rest. Adrian Sinclair, billionaire, business tycoon, my husband, the man who could silence a room with just his gaze, and the man I had vowed to love for the rest of my life. My hand trembled as I pulled the blanket off my body. That's when I froze. There was a bandage stretched tight across my abdomen. My stomach felt different, hollow. My heart lurched into my throat. What did you do to me? I whispered, staring at the nurse. She looked away. My blood went cold. The door opened with a soft click, and there he was, Adrian Sinclair, tall, broad-shouldered, immaculately dressed even in a hospital setting. His dark suit looked wrong against the stark whiteness of the room. But then again, Adrian always carried himself like he didn't belong in ordinary places. His eyes, sharp gray, calculating, swept over me with the kind of intensity that had once made me fall in love with him. Now it terrified me. "You're awake," he said smoothly, as though we were having breakfast at home instead of this. My lips trembled. What happened to me? He closed the distance between us, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor. He stopped at the edge of the bed, his shadow swallowing me whole. "You were sick, darling. You collapsed. The doctors had to make a choice to save you." The nurse shifted uncomfortably, her hands fidgeting with the clipboard. Adrian's eyes flicked toward her, a silent command that made her retreat without a word. I gripped the sheets. A choice. My voice cracked into a scream. What choice? His jaw tightened. For a fleeting second, I thought I saw guilt flicker across his face. But it disappeared as quickly as it came, replaced by the cold, controlled mask he wore so well. "They had to remove your womb, Evelyn," he said at last. "It was the only way to save your life." The words hit me like a gunshot. My womb, gone. The future I had dreamed of. Tiny fingers, lullabies, a child who might carry my smile, ripped away in a single sentence. "No." My head shook violently. "No, no, no." Tears blurred my vision. You let them do this to me?" "I didn't let them," Adrian snapped, his tone low but lethal. "I ordered it. And you should be grateful you're alive to scream at me right now." My heart shattered. Gratitude? Was that what he expected? Gratitude for stealing my womanhood, my choice, my dream? I wanted to claw his face, to scream until the walls cracked. But all I could do was stare at the man I thought I knew and realize he had just killed the version of me I used to be. If this already has you hooked, hit the like button because what comes next will shock you. Welcome to MG's Love Stories, where passion burns, hearts break, and you can't stop watching. Don't just listen. Feel it. Like this story, share, subscribe, and let's dive in. "You're a monster." I spat, my voice trembling. Adrian's lips curved into a humorless smile. "I'm your husband." He reached for my hand, but I yanked it away. His touch felt poisonous. "Why would you do this?" I whispered. My chest hurt with every breath. "You know how much I wanted." My throat closed, choking on the word. "Children." Adrian's eyes darkened. "You think I wanted to watch you destroy yourself over and over? Miscarriage after miscarriage. Doctors telling me your body couldn't handle it? No, Evelyn. I wasn't going to watch you die chasing something that was never going to happen. You didn't give me a choice." My scream echoed through the room. "You took everything from me." His face hardened, his jaw clenching. "I gave you life." "No," I whispered, tears dripping down my cheeks. "You gave me a prison. For the first time since I met him, Adrian didn't have a response. He just stared at me, those cold gray eyes unreadable, until the silence between us felt suffocating. And then, just as suddenly, he leaned closer, his breath brushing against my ear. "You're still mine, Evelyn, with or without a womb. Don't ever forget that." I froze, every muscle in my body trembling. This wasn't love. This was possession. When the door clicked shut behind him, I broke. Silent sobs racked my chest as I curled into myself, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. But even through the pain, through the hollow ache inside me, one thought burned brighter than all the rest. He thinks he's won. He thinks he owns me. But Adrian Sinclair has no idea what I'm capable of when I've got nothing left to lose. And right then, a vow was born inside me. One day I would make him pay. They say hindsight is 20/20, but when I looked back on my marriage to Adrian Sinclair, I realized the red flags were never red. They were gold, polished, wrapped in diamonds, hidden beneath candlelight dinners and whispered promises. In the beginning, Adrian was a dream, or at least he was the dream, a billionaire with the kind of power people wrote headlines about, a man who made the world bend just by walking into a room. And me? I was the lucky one who caught his eye. We met at a charity gala, the kind where everyone wore smiles as masks and clinked champagne glasses to hide their boredom. I was there because of work. My boss couldn't attend, so I was sent in her place. I'd worn the only dress I could afford, a pale blue satin that I rented, praying no one noticed the way I kept tugging at the seams. Adrian noticed, not the dress, me. His gaze found me across the ballroom, and for a moment, I thought I was imagining it. A man like him, with his dark tailored suit and air of quiet command, didn't look at women like me. But he didn't just look. He moved, cutting through the crowd, ignoring politicians and CEOs, until he was standing in front of me. "You don't belong here," he said in that deep, velvety tone. I wanted to melt into the floor. I'm just filling in for my boss." His lips curved, the faintest shadow of amusement tugging at them. "That's not what I meant." Then he held out his hand. "Dance with me." Felt like a movie, like fate. That night, under chandeliers and soft music, Adrian Sinclair looked at me like I was the only woman in the world, and I fell hard. Marriage to him was a whirlwind. Luxury trips to Paris, a honeymoon on a private island, a penthouse suite overlooking the city, flowers every morning, gifts I couldn't pronounce, and a husband who kissed me like the universe would collapse if he didn't. It was perfect. At least, that's what I told myself. Because for every tender kiss, there was a command hidden underneath. For every bouquet of roses, there was an expectation. For every whispered "I love you," there was an unspoken "prove it." I learned quickly that Adrian didn't like questions. He didn't like being challenged. And most of all, he didn't like losing control. But I loved him. God help me. I loved him enough to overlook the shadows creeping into our fairy tale. Until the shadows swallowed everything. It started with the baby conversations. First, it was innocent. "We'll have a little girl," Adrian whispered against my skin one night, tracing circles over my stomach. "She'll have your smile." I laughed, pressing my face into his chest. "What if it's a boy?" His hand stilled. "It won't be." I thought he was joking, but Adrian Sinclair never joked. When the pregnancy tests kept coming back negative, he grew quieter, colder. The tender man who once carried me in his arms after late nights became someone I barely recognized. Then came the miscarriage. It was early, barely 8 weeks, but it broke me. I cried for days, feeling like a failure, like my body had betrayed me. Adrian didn't cry. He didn't hold me. He just stood by the window of our bedroom, staring at the skyline. "Don't cry, Evelyn," he said flatly. "It makes you look weak." Weak. That word cut deeper than the loss itself. I should have left then. I should have packed my bags and run from the man whose heart was colder than marble. But instead, I stayed. I stayed because I was still in love with the memory of who he used to be. I stayed because I thought love was enough to fix broken people. And then, it collapsed. One minute, I was standing in the kitchen trying to make tea. The next, the floor was rushing up to meet me. Darkness swallowed me whole, and when I woke up, my womb was gone. That night played in my head like a broken record. The flash of white hospital lights, Adrian's voice commanding the doctors, my body trembling as I was wheeled into surgery. I couldn't remember the words, but I remembered the tone. Cold. Absolute. He hadn't just saved me. He'd decided for me. He'd stripped me of choice. And the perfect love story I'd once clung to, it shattered, revealing the ugly truth beneath. It was never love. It was control dressed in silk and diamonds. The door to my hospital room creaked open, snapping me from my thoughts. Adrian walked in, carrying a bouquet of white lilies. My favorite. He placed them on the table by my bed, as if flowers could erase the gaping hole inside me. "Evelyn," he said softly, his voice a deceptive caress. I glared at him through my tears. "Why?" He sat beside me, his hand brushing against mine. "Because I couldn't lose you." My body stiffened. "You didn't save me, Adrian. You killed me." His jaw clenched, his gray eyes flickering with something sharp. "Don't be dramatic. You're alive. You'll thank me one day." I laughed bitterly. "Thank you? For making me half a woman? For taking away the one thing I wanted most?" His gaze hardened. "The one thing I wanted most, Evelyn, was you. And I have you. That's all that matters." My stomach turned. He didn't see me as a wife, or a partner, or even a person. I was possession, a prize he refused to let go of. And in that moment, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. Adrian Sinclair would rather destroy me than ever let me go. Would you forgive a man like this? Comment your answer below, because her choice will change everything. That night, when Adrian finally left, I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. The room was silent, but my thoughts were louder than ever. I remembered the girl in the blue satin dress at the gala. The girl who believed in fairy tales. The girl who thought a man's attention was love. That girl was gone, and in her place was someone new. Someone broken. Someone angry. But broken things can be sharp, and anger can burn hotter than love. Adrian thought he'd won. He thought I was his forever, but he had no idea what kind of fire he had just lit inside me. One day, I would make him regret underestimating me. Moving forward, the first time I truly saw my husband for what he was, it wasn't in a boardroom headline or in the whispers of women who envied me for marrying him. It was in the way he stood at the foot of my hospital bed, arms folded, gaze like ice. There was no guilt, no apology, only certainty. "Why?" I asked again, my voice hoarse, my throat scraped raw from crying. Adrian's lips pressed into a thin line, as though he was growing tired of repeating himself. "I told you, it was necessary." Necessary for who? My voice cracked, but I pushed through it. For me, or for you? He didn't answer immediately, and the silence was worse than any lie he could have told. "I loved you, Adrian," I whispered, the words clawing their way out of me. "I gave you everything. And you—" My chest caved as I pressed my palm against the bandage on my stomach. "You took everything from me." His gray eyes finally met mine, colder than steel. "Don't be dramatic, Evelyn. You're alive. You should be thanking me." I let out a hollow laugh, one that shook with bitterness. "Thank you? For making me less than I was? For playing God with my body?" His hand shot forward, gripping my chin so tightly that I winced. "I saved you," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "I won't let you twist this into betrayal." I stared at him wide-eyed, trembling, but inside, something shifted. The fear began to burn into fury. "No," I whispered, voice shaking but steady enough to cut. "This was betrayal." He released me suddenly, stepping back like I had stung him. The room was silent except for the sound of my heart pounding like a drum. The next morning, when the nurse came to change my bandage, I asked her the question that had been chewing me alive all night. "Tell me the truth," I said, my voice low, desperate. "Was there another option?" She froze, her eyes darting toward the door like she expected Adrian to appear at any moment. "Please," I begged. I need to know. Her lips trembled before she whispered, yes. And just like that, the floor beneath me collapsed again. There had been another way, a chance to save me and my womb. And Adrian had chosen for me, had chosen to take the one thing I could never get back. That evening, when Adrian returned with another bouquet, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at him with a calmness that scared even me. Why didn't you tell me there was another option? I asked softly. His eyes flickered, but only for a second. Because it wasn't good enough. There was risk. Risk for who? For me? Or for your legacy? He stiffened. That one word, legacy, was the knife I drove straight into his chest. For a moment, I thought he might actually admit it. That all the grand gestures, the trips, the lavish gifts were never for me, but for the image of Adrian Sinclair, the billionaire who had everything. The perfect wife, the perfect marriage, the perfect heir. But instead, he smirked. That cruel, infuriating smirk that made me want to claw his face. You'll see, Evelyn, he said calmly. One day you'll thank me for this. You'll understand I did it for us. No, I whispered. You did it for you. He leaned closer, his lips brushing against my ear. You're mine. Don't ever forget that. And then he left me in the darkness, his cologne lingering like poison in the air. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the shadows began to move, whispering the same truth over and over again. He didn't do this to save me. He did it to control me. He wanted to make sure I could never give another man what I couldn't give him. And that realization shattered something inside me that could never be put back together. Would you forgive a man like this? Comment your answer below, because her choice will change everything. 2 days later, I was discharged. Adrian had the best doctors, the best nurses, the best everything money could buy. But money couldn't buy back the pieces of me he had stolen. When we arrived back at the penthouse, I looked at the life I once thought was perfect. The marble floors, the endless city view, the closet filled with designer clothes, and all I saw was a gilded cage. Adrian's cage. And for the first time in my marriage, I realized something. I wasn't safe. Not with him. Not with his money. Not even with myself. I was living with a man who believed love meant ownership, and who would burn the world to keep me under his control. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. I traced the bandage over my stomach, tears streaming down my cheeks, but my voice was steady when I whispered the words. I will destroy you, Adrian Sinclair. The vow was quiet, but it echoed louder than my heartbeat. For once, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous, because he had taken everything from me. And a woman with nothing left to lose is a woman you should fear. The walls of the mansion didn't feel like home anymore. They felt like a cage, each corner whispering secrets Evelyn hadn't asked to hear. Her husband's empire, polished with marble floors and chandeliers, had become a graveyard of dreams. Hers. That morning, she stood by the window, staring at the gardens she once adored. Roses bloomed as if mocking her, their beauty untouched by the storms of human betrayal. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, her reflection staring back at her. Same dark hair, same soft brown eyes. But behind those eyes lived a woman who'd been broken. Her womb was gone, her choice stolen. And it wasn't the doctor's scalpel that hurt the most. It was Adrian's decision. If you were Evelyn, what would you do? Would you forgive a betrayal this deep or walk away forever? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button. It helps me keep bringing you stories that cut this deep. Adrian had announced a dinner party for his business partners that evening. His world didn't pause for heartbreak. It thrived on power plays and appearances. Evelyn knew she had to attend, her presence a silent stamp of loyalty. She chose a black silk dress, simple but commanding, its neckline daring, as if to remind herself she still had power left in allure. When Adrian entered the bedroom, he froze. His eyes darkened, not with desire but with something unreadable. Guilt? Regret? Possessiveness? You're wearing that? His voice was low, controlled. Evelyn didn't flinch. Why? Does it bother you that I look desirable? He stepped closer, his hand brushing against her bare shoulder. Heat trailed his touch, igniting memories she hated herself for still craving. "It bothers me," he whispered, "that anyone else might think they can touch what's mine." Her heart stuttered. That word again, mine. She wanted to scream that he had no right, that ownership was not love. But her body betrayed her with a shiver she couldn't contain. At dinner, Adrian played the charming billionaire. He raised his glass, spoke about mergers, and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Evelyn sat beside him, smiling like the perfect wife, though inside her rage simmered. She felt eyes on her. His partners admired her, envied him. Adrian's hand stayed firm on her thigh beneath the table, a silent claim, even as he discussed stocks and strategies. The performance was flawless, but when the guests left, the stage collapsed. "You enjoy the act, don't you?" Evelyn asked, pulling off her earrings. Her voice carried exhaustion but also challenge. Adrian loosened his tie, eyes narrowing. "What act?" "The doting husband, the perfect marriage. While behind closed doors, you've already destroyed the very core of me." His jaw tightened. For once, the mask slipped. "Evelyn, don't." She held up her hand. "Don't say my name like you care. You cut me open. You erased my future. And you did it not because you had to, but because it was easier for you." Silence. His breathing deepened, chest rising and falling like waves crashing against jagged rocks. "You don't understand. Then make me understand," she snapped, her voice breaking. Adrian stepped forward, so close their breaths mingled. "I did it to save you," the doctor said. "Your pregnancy was killing you. Your body couldn't handle it." Her heart clenched. She remembered the dizzy spells, the fainting, the nights when pain twisted her abdomen like knives. But still, she had wanted a choice. "You could have told me," she whispered. Tears slid down her cheeks. "You could have trusted me with my own body." His hand reached for her face, trembling as if even he wasn't sure he deserved to touch her. "I was afraid of losing you. And now you've lost me anyway," she said. Do you believe Adrian was right to make that decision out of fear? Or was Evelyn right to demand her choice? Comment below. Your perspective might just change how this story unfolds. The days that followed were thick with silence. Adrian retreated into his empire, drowning in deals and late nights. Evelyn drifted through the mansion like a ghost. But the heart, cruel as it is, does not starve quietly. One evening, she found herself in the library. Rain pattered against the windows, thunder rumbling far away. She pulled out a book, only to find someone had left a note inside. "You are not alone." Her chest tightened. She knew whose handwriting it was. Liam's. Adrian's younger brother. The one with kind eyes and the reckless grin. The one who had always lingered in her periphery, dangerous in his gentleness. That night, when Liam found her in the corridor, the storm outside mirrored the one inside her. "You shouldn't leave notes like that," she whispered, though her hands didn't push him away when he cupped her cheek. "You shouldn't cry alone," he countered. His thumb brushed away a tear. The air thickened. Desire, grief, loneliness. It was all tangled. For a heartbeat, Evelyn leaned in, her lips parting. Liam's breath hovered against hers. Heat and danger wrapped in one forbidden temptation. But just as their mouths were about to meet, she pulled back. Her chest heaved. "I can't." His jaw clenched, pain flickering across his features. "Then I'll wait," he said softly. And he walked away, leaving her shaking against the wall. Would you risk everything for forbidden love? Or stay loyal even when loyalty feels like a prison? Like this story if the tension has you hooked, and share it with someone who loves slow-burn drama. The next morning, Evelyn overheard Adrian on the phone in his office. His tone was sharp, urgent. "No one must know. If this leaks, it will ruin everything." Her blood ran cold. She pressed her ear against the door. "Yes, I had her womb removed, but it wasn't just the pregnancy, it was the inheritance clause. My wife cannot bear an heir, which means control stays with me. If she knew, she'd never forgive me." The world tilted. Evelyn staggered back, clutching her chest. So it wasn't just fear. It was greed, power, The Empire came first. She came second. When Adrian stepped out minutes later, he froze. Evelyn's eyes were blazing, her face pale with fury. "You monster," she whispered. His lips parted. He knew. She had heard. And in that moment, something in her snapped. If you were Evelyn, would you expose Adrian and burn down his empire? Or play along until the perfect moment for revenge? Subscribe now. Evelyn stared at the woman in the mirror. Her face was pale, her lips cracked, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. She traced her fingers across her lower belly, where the pain had long since dulled into numbness, but the wound beneath her skin was deeper than any scalpel could cut. Her womb was gone. Not by fate, not by illness, by choice. Adrian's choice. The billionaire she once believed to be her rescuer had written her fate with the ink of greed, erasing the part of her that had dreamed of children, of little fingers clutching hers. But grief, she was learning, could transform, could rot into rage. And Evelyn was done being silent. The house seemed colder now. Adrian had grown suspicious since the night she overheard his drunken conversation. He watched her with hawk eyes, as if waiting for her to confront him. But Evelyn played the perfect role. She smiled at the right times, poured his drink, touched his arm. Behind her eyes, however, a storm brewed. One evening, Liam passed her in the corridor. His hands brushed against hers for only a second, too brief to mean anything to anyone watching, but enough to make her pulse race. She caught his gaze. It was full of questions and worse, full of answers. She quickly looked away. She couldn't afford distraction. Not now. When Adrian returned from work late at night, she would pretend to be asleep. When he left at dawn, she would sit by the window, her mind scribbling plans, ideas, fragments of revenge. How does one break a man who has everything? Not by leaving. Adrian would only hunt her down. Not by screaming. He would silence her with money. The only way was to take from him what he could never buy back. Trust, power, legacy. What would you do in Evelyn's place? Submit quietly or rise in silent rebellion? Comment your thoughts. Her first move was subtle. She began to talk more to the staff, maids, gardeners, even the driver. Not directly, not obviously, but with kindness. She wanted them to see her not as the fragile wife Adrian discarded, but as someone human, someone they could respect. Adrian never treated his staff like people. He barked orders, tossed money, and walked away. Evelyn, on the other hand, listened. She remembered names. She asked after families. Slowly, carefully, she built an invisible web of loyalty around herself. Because when the time came, she would need allies. Liam noticed the change in her. "Whatever you're doing," he whispered one day when they crossed paths in the garden, "be careful. He's not a man who forgives betrayal." Evelyn's lips tightened. "Then let's not call it betrayal. Let's call it survival." Their eyes locked for a second too long. And in that moment, Evelyn felt it. The dangerous spark between them, one that could ignite and burn them both alive. She forced herself to walk away. She couldn't fall for Liam. Not now. Not when her life was already balancing on a blade's edge. Weeks passed. Adrian grew colder, harsher. He accused her of being distant, though he didn't know the real reason. One night, he cornered her in their bedroom. "Why don't you look at me anymore, Evelyn? Why do you act as if I'm not your husband?" Her chest rose and fell with trembling breaths. "You're not my husband," she whispered, just low enough that he almost missed it. Adrian's hand slammed against the wall beside her head. "What did you say?" She swallowed hard, meeting his burning gaze. "You're my captor." For the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger, but fear. Fear of losing control. Adrian was a man who thrived on power, and Evelyn had just reminded him that she was no longer afraid of him. Have you ever reached a point where fear turns into strength? Let me know in the comments if you relate to Evelyn's transformation. That night, Adrian left the room without touching her. Evelyn lay awake, trembling, but also smiling. She had struck a nerve. The silent war had begun. Her second move came days later. Adrian kept a locked study, his temple of secrets. Evelyn had never been allowed inside, but opportunity often comes wrapped in accidents. One afternoon, while Adrian was out at a meeting, Liam appeared at her door, his face pale. He left the study open, just for a minute. If you've ever wanted answers, now's your chance. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest. Why are you helping me? Liam hesitated, then whispered. Because no woman deserves what he did to you, and because... His voice dropped. Because I can't stand seeing you suffer. Their eyes met again. This time, Evelyn didn't look away. She wanted to, but she couldn't. Shaking, she followed him down the corridor and slipped into the study. The room smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Papers were stacked neatly on the desk, drawers locked, files arranged by date. She hurried, her hands rifling through folders until one thick envelope slid free. Inside were documents, medical forms, bank transfers, signed approvals. Her name at the top of the surgical file. Adrian's bold signature at the bottom. Her knees buckled. She would have collapsed if Liam hadn't steadied her. He whispered, "Now you have proof. Proof that Adrian had stolen her womb. Do you think Evelyn should use this evidence against Adrian? Or keep it hidden until the perfect moment? Drop your answer on the comment section." She clutched the envelope like it was her last breath. Plan was forming. Slowly, painfully, but surely. Adrian wanted power. Fine. She would show him what it felt like to lose it. Her revenge wouldn't be swift. It would be patient, silent, deadly. And when the time came, Adrian would fall. Not by accident, not by chance, but by her hand. That night, Evelyn burned with a strange fire. She dressed in silk and greeted Adrian at dinner with a smile so sweet it startled him. She laughed at his jokes, leaned close, poured his wine. He relaxed, convinced she was his again. But behind her eyes, she was counting down. The war was only beginning, and Evelyn intended to win. If you're following Evelyn's journey, hit the subscribe button and comment "Silent War," so I know you're ready. Things are about to explode. The walls of the Sterling mansion glistened with luxury, yet Evelyn felt as though she were standing in a gilded cage. For months she had played the perfect wife, smiling at charity galas, clinking glasses at board dinners, nodding silently whenever Adrian droned on about his next conquest. But underneath that silk exterior, her heart was sharpening itself into a blade. Tonight, the blade would taste its first test. Evelyn had prepared her moves carefully. She understood Adrian's world now. His business, his enemies, his allies. She had read enough late-night documents, listened closely to hushed phone calls, and pieced together his weaknesses. And like any great predator, she wasn't going to strike his strength. She was going to gnaw at his foundation until his empire cracked. The plan began quietly with a single invitation. She sent word to Julian Cross, Adrian's fiercest rival in the real estate sector. A man Adrian despised enough never to let near his family. Evelyn had never spoken to Julian before, but she knew one thing. Men like him didn't refuse intrigue. The cafe was discreet, hidden away in Calabar's older district, where the air smelled of roasted coffee and the tiled floors carried the weight of history. Evelyn arrived alone, wearing a soft beige trench coat and oversized sunglasses. She sat by the window, her heart steady. Minutes later, Julian entered. Tall, sharp-jawed. His energy was different from Adrian's arrogance. He was quieter, the kind of man who observed before he acted. He removed his cap and sat opposite her, curiosity flickering in his gaze. "You requested this meeting," he said slowly. "Adrian's wife. Why?" Evelyn stirred her coffee, the spoon ringing softly. "Because sometimes, the enemy of my enemy is the friend I need." Julian studied her carefully, waiting. She leaned forward, her voice lowering. "I know things about Adrian, his deals, his hidden assets, his vulnerabilities. But I'm not here to sell information. I'm here to plant seeds. Because what I want isn't just revenge." She paused, her eyes glinting. "I want him to feel powerless." For the first time, Julian's lips curved into a smile. "You surprise me, Mrs. Sterling. Tell me, what's in it for you?" "Freedom," Evelyn replied without hesitation. Freedom from the man who thinks he owns me, and perhaps freedom for others he's crushed along the way. Julian tapped his fingers against the table. You're playing a dangerous game. Evelyn sipped her coffee. So is he. That night, back at the mansion, Adrian came home later than usual. Evelyn greeted him at the door, serene as always. He kissed her cheek absent-mindedly, muttered something about a boardroom victory, and walked past her. Evelyn smiled faintly at his retreating figure. Let him believe his kingdom was secure. But cracks had already begun forming. Over the following weeks, Evelyn subtly leaked pieces of Adrian's confidential dealings through intermediaries. Nothing too obvious. Just enough to raise eyebrows, enough to draw attention from authorities, enough to make his rivals circle like vultures. At the same time, she turned her charm outward, strengthening connections Adrian never allowed her to have. She became more visible at charity events, striking conversations with investors, politicians, and journalists. To the world, she was still the elegant Mrs. Sterling, but now she had an aura of quiet independence that made people lean in closer, curious. And Liam was her anchor. One evening, when Adrian was away in Abuja for business, Evelyn invited Liam into the garden. The night air was cool, the stars trembling above. She sat on a marble bench, her hands folded in her lap. I'm not the same woman you met months ago, she admitted softly. Liam crouched before her, looking into her eyes. No, you're stronger, fiercer. I can see it in the way you carry yourself. Evelyn's throat tightened. But I'm afraid too. Afraid that if Adrian discovers what I'm doing, he'll destroy everything. You, me, everyone who stands near. Liam reached out, his hand covering hers. Evelyn, you don't have to carry this war alone. For a moment, their hands lingered, the air between them alive with something forbidden. Evelyn drew back first, her heart racing. I can't lose focus, she whispered. Liam exhaled, but his eyes never left hers. Then let me be your shadow. While you strike in daylight, I'll guard you in the dark. The first real blow to Adrian came unexpectedly. At a high-profile investors' dinner, whispers of leaked documents surfaced. A few of Adrian's backers had pulled out last minute, citing concerns. Adrian laughed it off publicly, but Evelyn saw the twitch in his jaw, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Back home, he paced the living room like a caged animal. Someone's feeding my rivals, he growled, pouring himself a drink. Julian Cross doesn't have that kind of reach unless someone's handing him a knife. Evelyn sat calmly on the couch, crossing her legs. Maybe you're just slipping, Adrian. Even kings get tired. His eyes narrowed at her tone. Don't get clever with me, Evelyn. She tilted her head innocently. I'd never dare. But inside, her blood sang with victory. He was rattled. Weeks rolled on, and Evelyn's strategy deepened. She started visiting hospitals quietly, donating under anonymous names, meeting women who had suffered under men like Adrian. Abandoned wives, silenced voices, forgotten faces. She recorded their stories, saved them carefully. They weren't just testimonies. They were weapons waiting to be unleashed. Liam often accompanied her, blending into the background, ensuring no one followed. Each time, Evelyn felt her chest tighten more around him. His loyalty was different from Adrian's possessiveness. It was soft, steady, unasked for yet unwavering. One night, after dropping her back at the mansion gates, Liam lingered in the car. Evelyn leaned through the open window, her voice low. If I fall, Liam, promise me you'll carry the truth forward. He met her gaze, his jaw tightening. Don't talk about falling. You were born to rise. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Her breath caught. His eyes softened. She almost kissed him then. Almost. But instead, she stepped back, her heart screaming silently. Adrian, however, wasn't a fool. By late autumn, he had begun piecing together the whispers. He hired private investigators, demanded loyalty checks, and started monitoring Evelyn's movements more closely. One evening, he cornered her in the library, his gaze cold. Tell me something, Evelyn, he said quietly. Have you ever wondered what happens to women who betray me? Evelyn held his gaze, her heart steady. Should I? A slow smile crept over his lips. No, because you'd never do that. Would you? She smiled sweetly, leaning closer. Never, darling. But as he turned away, Evelyn's nails dug into her palm. The war had officially shifted. Adrian could smell the storm, but he hadn't yet realized the storm was sleeping in his bed. And Evelyn was just getting started. The gala was supposed to be Adrian Knight's night of glory, a celebration of yet another billion-dollar merger, where the city's elite would bow to his influence, the press would sing praises, and his enemies would envy his power. Evelyn stood by his side, draped in a deep emerald gown that shimmered like poison under the chandeliers. To the world, she looked like the perfect billionaire's wife, silent, elegant, loyal. But beneath the silk, her veins burned with defiance. Adrian's arm tightened around her waist as they entered the ballroom. Cameras flashed, journalists called his name, and Evelyn forced herself to smile. She had mastered the art of pretending, but her mind wasn't on the merger or the glittering diamonds. It was on the chaos she had already set in motion, the anonymous letters, the whispers in boardrooms, the alliances forming in secret. Adrian's empire was no longer unshakable. It was trembling, though he didn't know just how badly. Across the room, Liam stood near the press section, not as her protector tonight, but as her accomplice. Their eyes met for only a heartbeat, but the spark between them was undeniable. He had become more than her guard, more than her confidant. He was the reminder that she was still human, still capable of being desired, still capable of choosing a life not dictated by Adrian's cruelty. But Adrian noticed everything. His grip on her waist tightened to the point of pain. He leaned down, lips brushing her ear, and whispered in that low, dangerous tone that always made her skin crawl. Smile wider, Evelyn. This is our kingdom, and you're my queen. Don't you forget it. Her smile widened, not for him but for the war. The night unfolded with speeches, toasts, and carefully orchestrated applause. Adrian was in his element, charismatic, arrogant, untouchable. Yet Evelyn could see the cracks. The slight twitch in his jaw when an investor asked a question about his company's liquidity. The faint shadow in his eyes when he realized some of his usual allies were absent. She knew why. They were hesitating, doubting, questioning his invincibility. Seeds she had planted with precision. Halfway through the evening, Evelyn slipped away to the balcony for air. She wasn't alone for long. Liam followed, his presence as steady as it was dangerous. You shouldn't be here, she whispered, her breath fogging in the night. And leave you alone with him in there? Not a chance, Liam replied, his eyes searching hers. The distance between them was electric, unbearable. Evelyn felt the weight of years pressing down, years of silence, of being controlled, of losing pieces of herself. With Liam, those pieces didn't just return. They ignited. You're playing with fire, she murmured. Then let it burn, Liam said, his voice rough, his hand brushing hers for the briefest moment. It was reckless, dangerous, but the way her heart raced reminded her she was alive. She pulled her hand back just as the balcony door opened. Adrian's silhouette cut through the golden light of the ballroom. His eyes narrowed, suspicion coiling in his gaze. Enjoying the view? He asked smoothly, though his tone carried venom. Evelyn slipped her mask back on. Just needed air. Adrian's eyes flicked to Liam, then back to her. The silence was heavy, like a blade waiting to strike. But then, as always, Adrian chose control over explosion. He smirked and stepped closer, placing a possessive kiss on Evelyn's temple. Don't wander too far, my love. The world is watching. Days after the gala, the cracks widened. Anonymous reports began circulating online, allegations of fraud, of embezzlement of offshore accounts. Adrian stormed through his penthouse in fury, throwing glass after glass against the wall. Who's feeding them lies? He bellowed at his team on speakerphone. I want every leak traced, every rumor silenced. Do you hear me? Evelyn stood in the corner, calm, composed. Watching him unravel was almost intoxicating. Every shattered glass felt like a small victory. That night, when the storm subsided and Adrian finally collapsed into bed, Evelyn slipped into her private study. Liam was waiting, tension coiled in his posture. "He's losing control," Liam said. "Good," Evelyn replied, her voice steady. "But it's not enough. He needs to lose everything." "And you?" Liam asked, stepping closer. "What do you lose in the process?" Evelyn's chest tightened. She had sacrificed her body, her youth, her dreams. Adrian had already taken everything. What more could she lose? Except her heart, which was dangerously close to belonging to the man standing before her. Before she could answer, Liam's hand brushed against her cheek. She froze, torn between fear and longing. His thumb traced the edge of her jaw, gentle, reverent. No man had touched her like this in years, not with ownership but with care. "Evelyn," he whispered. She leaned in, the world blurring, her lips only inches from his. The door creaked. They pulled apart instantly. Adrian's shadow loomed in the doorway. His eyes scanned the room, suspicion sharp as a knife. "What are you doing up at this hour?" he asked, his voice deceptively soft. "Couldn't sleep," Evelyn replied smoothly. "I was reading." Adrian's gaze flicked to Liam, then lingered too long. The silence was suffocating. Finally, he nodded slowly, but his smirk was chilling. "Don't stay up too late. You need your beauty rest." He left, but the damage was done. Evelyn's heart pounded. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough. The following week, Adrian's paranoia became unbearable. He installed new cameras, hired additional guards, and demanded Evelyn account for her every move. He was slipping, and in his desperation, he became more dangerous. But Evelyn was no longer afraid. One evening, as Adrian prepared for yet another damage control meeting, Evelyn walked into his study. He looked up, irritated. "What?" She stepped closer, her eyes steady. "Be careful, Adrian. Not all enemies announce themselves." For the first time, his confident smirk faltered. He stared at her, as though truly seeing her for the first time, and Evelyn smiled. A small, sharp smile that told him everything he needed to fear, that the war wasn't outside his empire. It was in his own home. It was his own wife. The silence was louder than thunder. Evelyn sat in the heart of Adrian's mansion, the place that once felt like a gilded cage, now heavy with secrets clawing to be exposed. Every corner of the marble walls seemed to whisper of betrayal, lust, and a wound that could never heal. Adrian was unraveling. She saw it in his eyes. Those once cold, calculating orbs now twitched with the wildness of a predator sensing its cage closing in. Documents had begun to leak, whispers in the business world about offshore accounts and contracts signed in blood. Evelyn knew Liam's hand was in it, though he never confessed. He didn't need to. His silence was its own proof. One night, Adrian summoned her. His voice was calm, too calm. "Sit, Evelyn." She sat across from him, her spine rigid but her heart steady. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. He studied her, glass of whiskey in hand, fingers tapping the rim. "You've grown bolder," he murmured, tilting his head. "Tell me, wife of mine, do you think I don't see it? The way your eyes linger too long on the help? The way you slip away like shadows with secrets in your chest?" Evelyn didn't flinch. "I stopped living for your gaze a long time ago, Adrian." The glass in his hand cracked. Whiskey spilled, dark and sharp on the floor. His control was slipping, and she had just pushed it over the edge. Then, footsteps. Liam appeared at the door, summoned earlier under the guise of helping with Adrian's files. The air thickened. 3 souls bound in a triangle of desire, fear, and power. Adrian rose slowly, his face unreadable. "Liam," he said, voice velvet over venom. "Do you love her?" The question hung poisonous. Liam's chest rose and fell like a storm. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. If Liam confessed, Adrian would destroy him. If he lied, Evelyn's heart would shatter. Finally, Liam stepped forward. His voice was rough but steady. Yes, I love her. The world split. Adrian's face froze, then twisted. He laughed, a hollow, broken sound. So the loyal dog bares his teeth. He moved toward Evelyn, fury flashing. But before his hand could rise, Evelyn stepped into him, her voice sharp, cutting. You took everything from me, my body, my choices, my life, but you will not take this. Her words, laced with years of caged pain, landed like blades. For the first time, Adrian faltered, not because he feared her, but because he realized she no longer feared him. Power drained from him, drop by drop, as Evelyn's defiance filled the room. Liam moved closer, protective, steady. Touch her, and it's the last thing you'll do, he warned, his jaw set in stone. The standoff stretched, the mansion holding its breath. Adrian's empire outside was already collapsing, the vultures circling, the scandals rising. And here, in the home he thought he ruled, the throne slipped from beneath him. Adrian's laugh returned, but weaker this time. He turned away, pouring himself another drink with trembling hands. Take her, then. Take the scraps of a broken woman. You'll both regret it. But Evelyn didn't hear the venom. She heard her freedom ringing like a bell. She reached for Liam's hand. For the first time, she chose not out of fear, not out of survival, but out of desire. Their fingers intertwined, and in that simple gesture, Adrian became irrelevant. The empire he built was dusting away. The womb he stole did not define her. The love she had grown in the dark now burned like dawn breaking after a long, cruel night. As she walked out of that mansion with Liam by her side, Evelyn didn't look back. She didn't need to. Adrian had already destroyed himself. She had only ever needed to survive long enough to watch it happen. And that's how the billionaire's obsession unraveled into a twisted game of love, betrayal, and freedom. But tell me, do you think Evelyn made the right choice walking away with Liam? Or should she have stayed and destroyed Adrian completely? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know whose side you're on. Like, share, and subscribe if you want me to spin another story like this.